This is the richest woman in Asia. No one else comes close, not in money, power, or influence. She is at the very peak of everything. The cost of Savitri Jindal's sari alone can buy a mansion. She is a matriarch, an heiress, a political player, a philanthropist, and the woman behind one of India's biggest industrial dynasties. According to Forbes, Savitri and her family have a combined net worth of $39.7 billion. Her 2024 election affidavit listed movable assets worth about $22.9 million, including gold, diamonds, and other valuables, along with 249.375 kilograms of silver, valued at approximately $154,000. It also recorded a residential estate in Hisar valued at around $9 million. She has spent millions in the Jindal Foundation on education, healthcare, and youth programs. She is associated with multiple charitable institutions and is president of Maharaja Agrasen Medical College, Agroha, a local medical education initiative. She's been awarded multiple times for public service. For example, the Acharya Tulsi Kartitva Puraskar in 2008 and other honours for empathy and philanthropy. In 2021, she also received an international honour for women's empowerment. But how did a housewife from Haryana become the richest woman in all of Asia? Let's trace how a quiet woman from Assam came to control billions and build a legacy no one saw coming. Savitri Jindal was born in Tinsukia, Assam, in 1950. But her true story begins in Haryana, where she married Om Prakash Jindal. She came from a Marwari family with a modest background. She was born into a social environment with rituals that taught her patience and stillness. Her world revolved around kitchens and community activities. Marwari households are often described as business-minded and deeply family-centered. They raised children to become stewards, even when the family purse is poor. Savitri learned early how to keep the household together, how to balance budgets, solve quarrels between family members, and read people. All of these small skills helped her become a strong leader later in the future. There's an understated danger in underestimating people who look ordinary. Because ordinary people, especially women raised to be quiet, have a practice ground for resilience. Then came O.P. Jindal. He was a force of a man. Jindal was restless and inventive. He was a dreamer from Haryana who built a steel empire out of scrap metal, literally starting with buckets and pipes. He saw pipes and furnaces where others saw mere rubble. Their marriage stitched two lives together in a way that would matter to the nation later. Savitri's firmness merged with O.P.'s appetite for risk and industry. Together, they became the power couple behind one of India's greatest industrial dynasties. O.P. Jindal's story is something close to folklore in India. He was an ambitious man with a dream to build India's future in steel. In a country still wrestling with industrial poverty, he wanted to give his country something to be proud of. He started as a small-scale manufacturer of buckets and pipes and built his first factory with his own hands. In the early 1950s, he set up a tiny manufacturing unit. He moved from trading pipes in Calcutta to founding Jindal India in 1964, but kept building. He opened larger factories and new product lines with blind faith. He was a doer, a man who could look at a scrap heap and see a supply chain. Over the decades, he grew the Jindal Group into a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate, working with steel, power, cement, and infrastructure. Savitri was by his side, but unfortunately, she was not by his side as a boardroom strategist. No, she was a homemaker who managed their growing family and watched her husband's empire take shape from her living room window. She was the emotional center of the family. She made sure to build unity among their 9 children, especially amongst the 4 sons who would one day inherit the empire. Those sons, Prithviraj, Sajan, Ratan, and Naveen, would later become the heads of different Jindal entities. To the outsider, she was the dutiful wife, the homemaker. But Savitri was not just being a homemaker, she was also learning. She watched boardroom arguments and learned how that world worked. She absorbed the blunt business language of contracts, plants, and tons. She cooked, raised the children, maintained the household, but also learned who in the family could be counted on, which managers were honest, which factories could be trusted to run through the night. She even sustained relationships with workers and vendors. Her social game kept the company running smoothly for years. There's something quietly dizzying about a woman who can take the raw material of a family and turn it into a functioning succession empire. That's how legacies are made, by people who do the work many people consider small. And then, suddenly, tragedy tested her in ways she would never have imagined. They say some lives are rerouted by a single instant. For Savitri Jindal, that instant came like a bolt on the 31st of March 2005, when a helicopter carrying O.P. Jindal crashed near Saharanpur. It was a national shock. Business leaders mourned the loss of a visionary, but Savitri had lost her husband and the father of her 9 children. But there was an even bigger problem. By this time, the Jindal Empire was not a single company, but a knot of factories, pipelines, and power stations. When he died, that knot loosened, and the empire Jindal had spent years building was left without its driving force. So it began to fall apart, with boardroom battles and a huge drop in sales. Investors panicked, and there was so much news and media speculation. Imagine being the person expected to move through that storm and make everything ordinary again while grieving your closest person at the same time. That's the position Savitri was in, so at 55, Savitri Jindal suddenly found herself in charge of an empire worth billions with no business degree, no experience in corporate, nothing. No one had any faith in her. Could a woman who had never run a business possibly lead one of India's largest industrial groups? Many wondered out loud, but she did it. Everyone thought she would hand over the reins to a competent male and retreat into widowhood. But Savitri Jindal had other plans. No, she didn't do it the way actresses do it in the movies. There was no dramatic speech at a shareholders' meeting. Savitri simply accepted the role of chairperson emeritus of the O.P. Jindal Group. The businesses were largely the inheritance of his sons, but Savitri knew if she didn't step in, there wouldn't be much left for her sons to inherit. She took on the reins and began to oversee major projects and investments across India and abroad. But stepping into power was only the beginning. The real drama was the battlefield she walked into, not just in the markets and boardrooms, but also inside the family home. There were rival interests, and even sibling rivalry that every industrial dynasty knows well. As the Jindal business was split among sons and cousins, the tension was expected. Savitri had to be a mother, mediator, and strategist all at once. She had the soft skill, so it wasn't too hard for her to do. She quieted all crises, did her best to keep mills running, and still ensured wages were paid on time, so unrest wouldn't bloom in the worker quarters. She didn't pretend to know it all. She asked questions and leaned on the people who knew best. Of course, there were external skeptics. In a world where industries are run by men in helmets and suits, a widow taking the helm sounded hilarious to many. The patriarchal chorus murmured that she had to be a mere placeholder, someone who would be nudged aside once the men sorted their differences. Savitri didn't mind. She kept showing up. The effect was cumulative. She rescued the industries. Inheriting power is nothing like inheriting a bank account. When you inherit people, workers, regional managers, and sons with strong opinions, you inherit obligations. But she did that while staying true to who she was. She never became intoxicated with power. She still wore saris, still kept family at the center, and still spoke with softness. But that softness was very tactical. In fact, it opened doors, soothed tensions, and made people trust her authority. Her ascension would later make her not just wealthy, but symbolic, a phenomenal example for modern Asian women. By the time the first tax quarters and financial reports after OP's death were filed, everyone was shocked. The Jindal businesses had not imploded. That, my friend, is the beginning of greatness. Not the moment a crown is worn, but the moment the wearer proves they deserve the crown. Savitri Jindal did not just preserve the legacy, she expanded it. Under her watch, the steel arm, which is the heart of the Jindal Group, grew larger, more sophisticated, and better integrated into India's infrastructure. The company began to lead power generation projects across the world, not just in Asian countries. Even the cement and construction units bloomed to meet the nation's demand for roads, housing, and bridges. The group had completely evolved from a family-run enterprise to a global empire with tentacles across continents. And as India marched into a new era of green energy, electric mobility, and digital innovation, the Jindal Group led the way. Under her son, Savitri Jindal's leadership, for example, JSW invested in electric vehicles. In 2024, JSW took a 35% stake in MG Motor India, marking its formal entry into the EV market. It was the kind of vision O.P. Jindal would have admired, so Savitri endorsed it as a way to keep pushing their shared dream, building what India needs before India knows it needs it. Today, her family's combined empire is worth tens of billions of dollars, with each of her sons leading global-scale corporations, all still orbiting around her authority. Her sons each took charge of different divisions. Savitri Jindal heads JSW Steel and JSW Energy, while Naveen Jindal heads Jindal Steel and Power, Ratan Jindal heads Jindal Stainless, and Prithviraj Jindal heads Jindal SAW. Their mother, Savitri, also stepped into politics. By the late 2000s, Savitri had become a national name. The honor did not end there. Savitri was also conferred with Acharya Tulsi Kartritva Puraskar in 2008 by Akhil Bhartiya Terapanth Mahila Manda. Her family's businesses touched every part of India's growth story: steel for the bridges, power for the homes, and cement for the skies. Yet, for all her industrial influence, she wasn't satisfied staying behind corporate walls. The Jindals had always believed in public service, and O.P. himself had dabbled in politics to give back to the people who made his empire possible. So Savitri stepped into the political scene, and she stepped in 2005, the same year tragedy took O.P. Jindal's life. She entered politics by running for the Haryana Legislative Assembly from Hisar, a region that had once been O.P.'s stronghold. She won against all odds, and the people who had revered her husband rallied behind her, seeing in her not just continuity, but courage. For a woman who had once lived far from the boardroom, Savitri became an unstoppable force overnight in the two most male-dominated spaces in India, politics and business. Haryana's political journey was rough and filled with men who didn't welcome her into their playground. But Savitri had already survived worse. In politics, she simply applied the same principles she had mastered in business: patience, precision, and determination. As part of the Haryana government, she held key ministerial portfolios like revenue, disaster management, consolidation, rehabilitation, and housing. Those were heavy technical responsibilities that shaped how the state functioned. She was hands-on, visiting districts personally and listening to complaints from farmers, widows, and small traders directly. She was so efficient and willing to listen. She also refused to play dirty politics. She attended political events in simple cotton saris, but beneath that motherliness was iron. She knew the difference between leading with empathy and being taken for granted, so she made sure to command respect without demanding it. Balancing business and politics, however, was never simple. The Jindal name attracted a lot of scrutiny, yet Savitri managed with remarkable composure. She was careful to maintain a line between her political role and the family's empire. Soon, her sons were handling all the companies, while she focused on governance and social programs like education, women's empowerment, and rural development. Still, there were moments when political opponents accused her of favoring her family's industrial interests. In 2012, her name appeared in discussions about industrial lobbying, and in 2014, political rivals tried to link her business ties to her legislative decisions. Through all these, she never lashed out publicly. She let her work do the talking. In her worldview, reputation was not something you defended. It was something you proved. By the early 2000s, Savitri Jindal had become a symbol of wealth and of female strength in spaces traditionally ruled by men. Her dual identity, billionaire and public servant, made her a rare phenomenon in Indian politics. She was a woman who could walk into a room full of hardened politicians and command silence. But even icons face setbacks. In 2014, Savitri suffered a political defeat. She lost her seat in the Haryana Assembly. Critics immediately decided her political career was over. Some said she was better off sticking to philanthropy. Then, in 2024, nearly a decade after her loss, Savitri Jindal, at 74, surprised everyone once again. She joined the Bharatiya Janata Party, but by October she won Hisar as an independent candidate. Her move reminded everyone that Savitri Jindal never truly leaves the arena. She just re-enters when the timing is right. At 74, when many would be retiring, she chose to remain in the fight. What's remarkable is how she's managed to stay relevant in every decade of her life. In her 50s, she was rebuilding. In her 60s, she was governing. In her 70s, she is mentoring and continues to sit at the crossroads of India's economic and political power, revered by industrialists, respected by politicians, and loved by the public. To her supporters, she's the matriarch of progress. She doesn't fit into neat categories. She's the billionaire who still prays before big decisions, the politician who smiles at her detractors, the leader who still wields power as a responsibility. That same year, Savitri Jindal became the richest woman in India. It was announced on the 3rd of March 2024, the same day she made history as the 50th richest person in the world. She is also the world's 7th richest mother. Today she stands as one of India's most respected women. In a country where women are still fighting for boardroom seats, Savitri is still standing tall. Today the Jindal Group stands among India's most powerful conglomerates. Its operations stretch across continents, from steel plants in India and Oman to energy projects in Africa. This year alone, the Jindal family's combined net worth has soared to around $35.5 billion, making Savitri Jindal not only India's richest woman, but also one of the few female billionaires in the world to control such a vast industrial empire. Yet if you ask her what she values most, she won't say steel or money. She'll talk about family, about service, and about legacy, the kind that can't be measured in Forbes rankings. At her core, she has always been a philanthropist, a strong believer in giving back and in building institutions that outlive people. So, as president of Maharaja Agrasen Medical College in Haryana, she poured resources into healthcare and ensured that people who could not afford private hospitals could access them. Education also became a cornerstone of her mission. The Jindal Foundation, under her guidance, has funded schools, scholarships, and community projects across the country, especially in rural Haryana and Odisha, where the Jindal Group's factories operate. Her sons may run the businesses now, but the family still orbits around her. Savitri Jindal represents a shift in the narrative of wealth and gender in Asia. In a continent often defined by patriarchs, Savitri stands as the silent matriarch. Because, let's be honest, India has seen powerful business families before. What it hasn't often seen is a woman stepping into one of the toughest, most male-dominated industries: steel, power, infrastructure, and making a billion empire with it. Her influence on the steel sector is impossible to ignore. India's growth story in the 21st century, roads, bridges, urban skylines, carries the mark of Jindal Steel. And she's done it while setting a precedent for women who dream beyond the limits of tradition. You rarely find female industrialists in heavy manufacturing. She's funded many schools, hospitals, and vocational programs. Her impact, though, reaches beyond numbers. When Forbes lists her as Asia's richest woman, it's a reminder that legacy can be feminine. There are billionaires who collect things, yachts, islands, rare art, and then there's Savitri Jindal, one of the few billionaires whose fortune isn't scattered in offshore vaults, but in factories and foundations across India. The Jindal family doesn't flaunt palaces, but they own everything. In Hisar, Haryana, stands the family's ancestral home, a sprawling estate that serves as both headquarters and heart. It's the site of political rallies, religious ceremonies, and late-night strategy meetings that have shaped both the Jindal Empire and local politics. But the Jindals didn't stay provincial. Mumbai became their second kingdom. On Nepean Sea Road, one of India's most expensive stretches of real estate, sits the Jindal family mansion, a large building facing the sea that is an obvious product of old money. Think large columns, carved balconies, and the kind of view that only the country's elite can afford. Industry insiders estimate the property alone could be worth over 200 crore rupees, possibly more if you count the premium location. Currently, she is known to live in one of Delhi's most posh residences in the heart of Lutyens, Delhi. The Jindal house flaunts 4 lavish bungalows and is estimated to be between $13.75 to $16.5 million. Reports suggest that this 3-acre property is not just the luxurious home of the Jindal family, but also a marker of prestige in Delhi. There are also several reports that she owns many commercial land assets under the Jindal Group. They are likely located in several parts of Haryana, Raigad, and Maharashtra. In fact, in the 2014 Haryana election, she declared assets worth $12.43 million. In Angul, Odisha, Savitri Jindal has an airport named after her, the Savitri Jindal Airport, built by the Jindal Steel and Power Company. That's not a mere vanity project. It's an operational hub for executives and engineers flying in to oversee steel plants and power stations. The Jindal family also owns and maintains corporate jets. The Jindals don't play the public opulence game. They don't throw $5 million weddings in foreign capitals or cruise the Riviera on custom yachts. Their taste is rooted in tradition, heritage homes, charitable institutions, and long-term assets that last. Yet her wardrobe is filled with mostly elegant silk saris, often hand-woven in Banaras or Kanchipuram, each of them probably costing a fortune in craftsmanship. A single sari could easily range from 50,000 rupees to several lakhs. Her jewelry, too, is expensive, but sleek gold bangles, diamond studs, strings of pearls, but not the loud statement pieces of nouveau wealth. A few of them are heirlooms. When it comes to cars, the Jindal family's garages are filled with understated luxury. Reports link them to high-end SUVs and sedans, Mercedes, BMW, perhaps a Range Rover or two, vehicles fit for political life and industrial travel. The real extravagance lies not in what she drives, but where she goes. From the heartlands of Chhattisgarh to the polished boardrooms of Delhi, Savitri's power can be felt for miles. She's been honored repeatedly for women's empowerment, industry leadership, and philanthropy. Her name has appeared in Forbes, Fortune India, and Business Today as one of the most powerful women in Asia. In 2021, she received recognition for her contributions to women's leadership in industry. And in multiple states, civic and business bodies have decorated her for her impact in education and healthcare. But if you ask her, the real reward is in seeing her family's work continue to employ hundreds of thousands while powering the engines of India's growth. Savitri Jindal's story isn't just about money, it's about mastery of circumstance. It's about a woman who faced the kind of loss that could have shattered anyone, and instead built an empire that outlived the storm. Think about it. She began as a quiet homemaker in Haryana, living in the shadow of a man. But when fate took him away, she didn't fade into the background. She immediately stepped into rooms that she had never seen a woman in charge of before, held her ground against skepticism, and built on the foundations her husband had laid.